Hello, everyone. This is our last podcast on Module 6, which covers chapters 11 and 12. So, Chapter 11 is groups and individuals, and you'll notice it gets into a lot of the concepts that we've talked about just at the individual level so far. We've talked a little bit about norms and status, but this gets into sort of how the individual functions and operates within a group setting. So, what happens to individual behavior and decision making when under the influence of a group? It's going to bring up some other topics that we've gotten into, like de individuation, where we looked at sort of Ash's conformity experiments, how a group can make someone's decision differ depending upon what they perceive the norm to be. So we're going to bring that up again and talk about it in a few other settings as well, and bring in what happens with cooperation versus conflict. A little bit of discussion on the social dilemma. What exactly is that? And then we're going to go down and get into the consequences of group polarization and group think, which are phenomenons that happen within the group setting where individuals lose their sense of direction individually. You know, as a person, I hold certain values, beliefs, moral standards, and that might change or verge when I'm under the influence of group processes. So that's mainly what the chapter is covering there. And then we're going to go ahead and get into Chapter 12, Adversity and Happiness. First, looking at happiness in a lot of different settings, work, marriage, etc., as well as what creates for happiness, what are the factors of it, what makes for a happy person. Can we define happiness, or is it different for everybody? And we're going to also take a look at how it can also affect, or be affected, I should say, by stress, and the mechanisms for that. And then looking at just adversity in terms of relationships primarily, but also workplace setting. So this gets a little bit into industrial organizational psych as well as positive psych. And we have a few videos this week that are going to be about happiness in particular, looking at it cross-culturally. So that will help give some more weight to these last questions here. What countries are happiest and why? So you'll get a little bit of that from the book, but as well from the video. Okay, here are your article readings. Here are your lecture slides for 11 and 12. Here is the first video aside from the ones that you're watching in Revel, and this one is on the Stanford Prison Study. It's the actual original study by Phil Zimbardo. So it's about 50 minutes long in its true form from back in the 70s. So I think you'll find that funny, but also interesting. Here's some good questions to help guide you. In the past, people have had some issues watching the video. I have the video streamlined through CIT, and depending upon the settings on your browser in particular, you might have issues opening it. So I've given you this in red, just some tips on what to do if you're having trouble opening it. If you follow these settings, you should be good to go. Here is the next video, social facilitation and social loafing. So remember, those two concepts are in the chapter covering group behavior and group dynamics. In particular, these two concepts look at what happens to the individual when they feel like maybe their efforts aren't noticed within a group. So it's just a little demo video, very short, introducing you to those two topics. And this video you're going to recognize from before when we talked about conformity. It's sort of the second part of that, which is groupthink. But linked to conformity, like I said, groupthink often has to do with the individual being diminished in their capacity to think within the group, which can play a role in some of the things that we've talked about previously, like Ash's conformity study. So the two are very linked. But the video, again, if you didn't watch it all the way through last time, please do, because it covers conformity first and then groupthink. Even if you did watch it, I say watch it again. Make sure you have a solid understanding of groupthink. Okay, and then here is the last video on happiness, and this is the one I was talking about that looks at it cross-culturally. It was a Dateline special, which covers research by Dan Goleman and Sonia Lyubomirsky, and they are positive psychologists, which fall under the umbrella of social psych, and they look at a lot of different concepts like, does money buy happiness? If so, how much? What does it look like if you have a happy brain? So neurologically, what's kind of happening in your brain when you feel pleasure and feelings of happiness and contentment. We'll be taking a look at different areas around the globe, at who is happy and why, what factors, internal or external, play a role in that. So again, if you have trouble with the video, please try some of these tips here, and hopefully you should be okay. So your discussion posting for this module is based on, again, the readings, but also the video, so make sure that you're watching that. You're going to be answering some questions about the Stanford Prison Study, specifically factors that contribute to de-individuation, and taking a look at, the roles of the prisoners and the guards in the study. These were all normal college-age men, put into a situation where nobody really knew what to expect, and the roles that they were assigned really ended up being powerful. So I want you talking a little bit about the role versus one's own personality and free will. How do those factor in when put in a situation such as the Stanford Prison Study? So those two deal mostly with groups and group behavior. And then the last question here is where we start to get into happiness. And I'm also going to tie back in the video that you saw in the last module, America the Rude, because America the Rude was really about the decline of decorum in America and just, us becoming really sort of rude to one another. But it is linked and tied to happiness. A big key part of that is that people are depressed, people aren't happy. Why is that? What would make Americans more happy? Is it income? Is it leisure time? And so here I'm asking a little bit of your own experience. I'd love to hear, your own observations of family and friends. Do you agree with the proposition that Americans would prefer more money over leisure time? And what's that doing to us? We're chasing the almighty dollar. What is that doing to us in terms of our happiness? So be specific in explaining that. And definitely, if you can cite anything from the articles, the video, and the chapter, please do. And then obviously the last part of the question does ask you to refer to the video from last module and, take it all together and tell me what your thoughts are about this. Okay, and then you have your exam covering chapters 11 and 12, and that's due by the 16th, which is the very last day of class, 11:59 p.m. So that is it for this module. Great class, short class, but a good time getting to know some of you via email and such. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks.